Hey traders, welcome to this week's FX commodities crypto game plan. Starting with the dollar, as we can see, the structure that we were lining up for the last few weeks really starting to play out, approaching the recent highs and highs of the year, I believe, for the DXY. Obviously quite a big level sitting here with a pretty much decent amount of resistance, but we believe we're going to break through there and then pull back later on in terms of the structure. So this week definitely should expect the dollar to continue moving higher. You may see a bit of a choppy start given the structures that we're seeing across the board, but generally speaking, the dollar should head higher. We'll take a look at those structures in some of these pairs that we're looking at, like the euro, for instance. But again, when you look at the euro, our euro short playing out quite nicely, downside target 115, and should continue to see that moving in that direction throughout the week. We're going into the lower time frames, heading into the hourlies. You can see how we had quite a big push off the lows towards the end of last week, and a little bit of a dip to end the week. I suspect all of that is just part of a corrective structure. We're getting some choppiness now, so all of this should continue to chop in this region for some time before heading back towards the lows and then potentially another pop higher from there, just to give us that corrective structure. But being the lower time frames, that's very speculative price action. It's very possible we just continue down from here, and what we're seeing here may be something more of a corrective structure. It does have that look to an A, B, C, D, E corrective structure, and that could continue. So very speculative on the lower time frames, as they always are on the lower time frames, but much clearer higher time frame structures. And what we're seeing is a continuation of basically a dollar bull market in the short term. Very possible we see a bit of a bounce from this region, this 115 region. Not entirely high probability given some other possibilities and what we're seeing across the board in the other dollar pairs. But given the structure that we see here, it is very possible, and we just need to take note of what occurs at this 115 region. It's very possible it only kind of relates to the euro and the pound, but we'll have a look at that when the time comes. But for now, as we said, dollar bull market definitely on the run. Pound kind of the same, still chopping down towards the lows. As you can see, a little bit of resistance at this region. Given what the euro is doing, what the dollar is doing across the board, I suspect what we're going to see here is just a continuation to the downside. I'm not interested in trading the euro unless we pop back up to this 140 region, which is a very possible down the line. It's also possible we're making a little bit of a triangle here, a bit of an A, B, C, D, E type structure. When you look at the structure itself, it does have that kind of look to it. Triangle is very, very notoriously difficult to trade, and something we are watching for. Obviously, we'll need a couple of more waves to finalize that structure if that is the case, but definitely giving us that look at the moment. So we'll be watching for that just to see what develops throughout this week. If we do see a triangle complete, we'll definitely be looking for that short. So members will be watching that throughout the week. Aussie dollar, US dollar still hovering around our entry order, but still looking good in terms of the structure for continuation down. As you can see, nice big impulse off the highs, very big clean corrective structure, very high momentum correction to the downside, what we call a high momentum correction, which means we should get a nice strong impulse moving forward. And that's giving us a little bit of a corrective structure on the lower time frames, again going into the hourlies. Again, looking a lot like a bit of an expanding triangle corrective structure. We're seeing a lot of expanding triangles in the market at the moment, just because there's a lot of uncertainty. Are we going to get inflation? Are we going to get deflation? Is there going to be tapering? Are we going to see a continuation of QE? And basically, when you get that kind of polarity in the narrative, you get these big moves to the upside, big moves to the downside, moves to the upside, while the market's trying to figure out what's happening. And that's how we get these expanding triangles. But as we see, we'll eventually see this break to the downside in terms of the higher time frame structures. So that's looking a lot like we're going to break lower, very much in line with our kind of debt crisis thesis that we're seeing coming out of Asia. I do believe we're going to see another Asian debt crisis over the next few weeks, months playing out. These things take a while to play out, and that's going to see the continuation of the dollar bull market, in my view. The New Zealand dollar, US dollar, kind of the same thing, very, very clean structure to break lower. we are looking for a clean break of this little flag here to trade to the downside. Big strong push off the highs that we saw, off the lows that we saw last week. As you can see, again, push higher, push down, big push up, big push down. This is expanding triangles just playing out over and over again. I think a break of these lows definitely on the cards for a potential trade to the downside. And then US dollar CAD, structurally speaking, just waiting for what looks like a corrective structure to complete. We were saying getting into this area here to look for the buy or look for a turnaround, given the structure we're seeing on the higher time frames. But so far, so good in terms of the structure. I do believe we should see a turn to the upside. You can see what's called a bit of a fractal structure playing out here. As you can see, you have this bigger ABC corrective structure, which has kind of an expanding flat look to it. Didn't get as low as I suspected, but quite an expanding flat. And now we go to the lower time frame, and you're seeing that same thing play out here. And it should kind of, as you can see, bounce from this 1.618 region to the upside. So slightly underwater with this trade, quite close to our stop loss, but I believe we're in an area where we should start to see a bounce from this region. I'm going to leave my stop loss as is, just given the structure that we're seeing. I don't want to add too much risk onto this by widening my stop loss. I've already got some good trades that are in the money, so I'm just going to leave that as is for now. US dollar yen looks like it's playing out as we suspected, where we said potentially what we're seeing here was this ABC corrective structure following a bigger correction. So the lower time frame structure is sitting in this region here, very strange looking structure. It's like a contracting flat. Your B wave doesn't go and break the highs, but your C wave doesn't go and break the lows. Again, it's a sign of uncertainty in the markets. And when you see that uncertainty in the markets, once it kind of solves itself, it breaks out pretty strongly in one direction. And as we've said for many, many weeks now, we're waiting for the US dollar yen to break higher up towards this 118 region. Entry order above the highs, definitely on the cards. When we zoom out, structurally speaking, you can see how it does work for 118, but it's also working for, when we zoom all the way out, there's a structure that actually gets us up towards kind of 122, 124. Members know about that, and we broke that chart down step by step in the lessons, and that's a possibility. But as you can see right now, we like the US dollar yen long. It's just a matter of finding an entry order or finding a setup to trade, which we are watching pretty closely. Silver, a bit of a bounce this morning, but continues to look pretty weak to the downside, breaking down out of this little triangular structure. Still a couple of possibilities for a bounce here, given the structure that we're seeing. It's a little bit difficult to read, but we do like the trade so far. I do believe longer term, you're going to see silver fall. It's just a matter of, are we going to get a bounce that's conducive with this little push higher here? Pretty much the same lines as the euro, where we have a potential little bounce first. Or was this your final wave higher, and now all of this is just a move to the downside, in which case we should just be impulsing to the downside. So lots of questions on silver in the medium term or short term, but generally speaking, downside, and our downside targets are kind of $4, big move down from here, but getting that entry is difficult. So we're waiting for that to clarify itself. Gold looking kind of similar, not as bullish, not a big bounce potential. It looks to me like this ABCDE triangle is playing out. So we're bearish gold this week. We suspect we're going to go test the lows of this, basically this entire corrective move for new lows of the year at around about 1675. Bounce off of that, slight bounce up towards 1740-ish, and then a move down from there. That's my call for gold moving forward. And then longer term targets of 1250-ish, somewhere in there. Was 1210, but as you can see, quite a big move down from there. So very bearish silver and gold in the longer term. Shorter term, I believe downside. Medium term, potential bounce in there somewhere. But I prefer trading silver here, so I'm short silver and hoping we don't get that bigger bounce. If we do get that bigger bounce, we take the stop loss at break even, and we look for that re-entry for the short down the line. Copper still kind of chopping around, still has this head and shoulders type structure to it. Still remain bearish in the longer term, basically bearish all the metals right now. Longer term, looking for a move down towards kind of 1.4, 135, somewhere there. So it's a big move. I mean, it's a kind of 60% haircut in copper, and I believe it's got to do with lack of demand coming from China as a result of a potential debt crisis that's occurring there. And in lower timeframes, you can see this head and shoulder structure forming. In terms of our analysis, again, kind of looking more like a triangle of some kind. Maybe a running triangle is forming here. Maybe this pops higher and gives us a bit of a 1, 2, 3 up, 1, 2, 3 down, 1, 2, 3 up C, big move down D, E wave, just a pop higher and a rally down from there, expanding triangle. So very, very uncertain at the moment, but generally speaking, higher time frames aim for lower moves down. Platinum kind of similar, really, really bearish structure forming here. Temporary rally up towards kind of 120, and then a big fall potentially down from there. It's a big running flat structure to the downside that's forming, which should follow palladium lower, which is at a very, very strong move down from our call of highs at around about 2.8. Haven't traded this, but the structure is laying out exactly what we can expect for the other precious metals moving forward. Euro Oz, still correcting, waiting for that to kind of finalize itself. Euro New Zealand, still another short that we like. Entry order around about these 165 region, still playing out, still waiting to see clarity in this little structure. Go to the lower time frames. So it is a very lower time frame structure. It's going into the hourlies, which makes it very difficult to read. But I think an entry order below these lows is fairly safe with a wider stop loss, and that gives you a possibility for a bigger move down. It's got a good risk reward ratio, so everything looks good there. Euro Swiss waiting for that corrective move, lower time frame. Again, just these big expanding triangle type structures laying themselves out. In terms of how big this correction is, I want to see a little bit more from this to give us the possibility for the long, but I do like the higher time frames for the Euro Swiss. Members know about that setup. Euro Pound looks like we're pulling back from these highs. We did say watch for this one. We got out of this trade a little bit early, but we said keep your stop loss nice and tight. Watch for this one to have a big dip and not get up to our full target. We got up to basically a double top at 86 and quite a strong move down. We may still chop up to 87. It's not a trade I'm still interested in. We suggested trailing your stop here. So even if you did trail your stop and you didn't close where we were, you should be out just slightly higher where we got out. And if you're still holding on, hoping for the higher time frames, then yeah, just keep trailing that stop nice and tight, because like we keep saying, it's not a structure that we suspect will get up to the full target of our trade. So just be cautious with that one. Euro yen, strong bounce off the lows, maybe a double bottom forming here. So I think re-engaging your entry order above these highs is valid. You have to have quite a wide stop there, or you can wait for a lower time frame structure to develop here. But higher time frame, the setup looks good. I do believe we're going to see a nice strong run in the euro yen moving forward. Just about waiting for that setup to get long. Pound Oz waiting for the corrective move. Patience, patience, patience. Pound New Zealand waiting for the corrective move. Patience there. Pound Swiss. Again, just really, really choppy, waiting for clarity there. Pound yen waiting for a little bit of a setup. As we said, we're waiting for a bigger setup here. We've got quite a big strong bounce up here. So if we continue to chop down from here, or we get some more clarity in the structure, it'll be more comfortable putting the entry order below the lows. But so far, so good. Just waiting to see what's developing there. Aussie yen, quite a big rally coming into the end of the week. But structurally speaking, I still like downside here. Just waiting to see what's going to develop this week. We still short New Zealand dollar yen. Obviously, quite a big rally off the lows, making it a bit of a wild ride. We're now sitting right by our entry order, and hopefully we start to see some downside there. The structure I still like. I still think it's good. Nice impulse off the highs. Big choppy ABC corrective structure. Big impulse. So I'm hoping that all of this is just a little bit of a corrective move that's forming in here for continuation to the downside, and that risk off to continue. So we'll be waiting for that to give us indication this week. Same with pounds or Swiss yen. Really nice move off the highs, then a really strong rally last week to the upside. So we're watching for this to give us a little bit of decent downside here to close the stock down to this region, take some risk off the table, because obviously this is a very strong move off the highs, coming out of a little bit of a dangerous area in terms of the structure. As you know, this 0.786 to 1 region of the structure is always dangerous. We've got a strong impulse. So if we start to kind of correct in this region, and it looks like we're going to start to see further upside in the Swiss versus the yen, then we'll look to close this trade for break even, or narrow the stop loss to minimal risk. So we're watching this price action very closely this week. I still like downside in terms of the higher time frame structure, although it is a little bit of a dodgy structure. So we'll be watching for this to give us more clarity on the lower time frame, so we can maybe reduce potential risk on the table. Oil running strongly, nice little trade here. That's continuing to rally. We've broken the highs now at 77. So our worry about this lower time frame structure is now removed. We're now just impulsing to the upside. I believe the next upside target is $100 oil, $100 to the barrel. So we'll be watching this to just continue to rally. You could see oil rally pretty strongly here. Lots of fuel shortages and issues in the power and energy sector at the moment. ESG policy really started to take hold in a negative way for oil, or bullish for oil, but negative for countries and their energy oil supplies. So we could see oil rally strongly up to our full target at 100. So watching that rally, or watching that pretty closely. What else is on the cards? US dollars are really strong into the week. Last week, basically all EM currencies were bearish against the dollar. There's some setups brewing, like especially in the US dollar Korean won. This is a nice big setup of a very, very big structure that is playing out on all time frames. So weekly, when we zoom out, you can see, even go out to the monthlies, you can see this big triangle that's been forming since the last Asian debt crisis is now looking like it's ready to break out. You can see we ride on that trend line. And then we go into the lower time frame structure. You can see how we're coming out of the daily, coming out of a nice big daily. It's actually more of a weekly structure, big weekly. Here we go. This big ABC corrective structure, impulse ABC, impulse off the lows. So this is actually the end of the triangle here. This is your first impulse and your first lower time frame corrective structure, and now we're impulsing off those lows. So we want to try to find a long entry for the US dollar Korean won, because it is a really, really big move suspected moving forward. And again, we're seeing this across the board in basically the renminbi, the Mexican peso, the Singapore dollar, the Brazilian real, the ruble, the Turkish lira. They're all lining up for a strong dollar move. If the dollar is going to rally, it's going to rally strongest against these emerging markets. So we're looking for further entries there. I'm already in the US dollar ZAR. So that should continue to rally moving forward. And then crypto still have a bearish tinge to it. Right at the lowest time frames coming out of here, got a little bit higher than I suspected. But when we look at the structure, it still has this big ABC corrective structure, still seeing downside. So until we get some decent moves higher, I remain really bearish the crypto space. Got a clearer picture on the Ethereum. As you can see, Ethereum's got this expanding flat. Excuse me. Ethereum's got this big expanding triangle, as you can see, and it's getting some pretty decent downside there. So just watching for this to continue to break lower. But basically, I would want to short. We don't short crypto, but if you are trading crypto, I would short anything below this trade here, because that should start to move to the downside out of the structure, getting the choppiness because of alternation, as our members know, but this should continue to move down from this region. And that's across the board in all the cryptos. It's cool, guys. That's it for the week. Hope you have a good one. Members, we'll see you in the members area. If you're not a member and you would like to join us, then sorry, then you can join us at senecalytics.com or at senecalytics on Twitter for some more analysis and some more trade ideas there. Cool, guys. Hope you have a good week, and we'll chat soon.